Over the last year, TikTok and Instagram Reels have consumed so much of my time. Eventually, I was in so deep to where I was being recommended videos known as ADHD Traps. I don't know if it's because my attention span has been shot to the ground, but the visual and auditory stimulation in these videos make my brain go numb. As a game developer, seeing these videos made me curious to know whether I could recreate these simulations. These videos aren't necessarily complicated, so I knew I could make something like this in Unity Engine, so that's where we'll begin. I booted up Unity Engine for the first time in a while, and I knew I only really needed two things, a circle and a ball. I can go ahead and add a collider to both objects and then add a rigid body with a physics material to the ball. With that, we now have the basis of the simulations. But obviously, as you can see, this doesn't look nearly as interesting as the simulations we saw earlier. One thing that I don't like is how the ball bounces. It just doesn't look right. Instead of using physics, I'll simply translate the ball along the forward vector of the ball, so wherever the ball is facing, it will move in that direction. Anytime the ball hits something, the ball will be oriented in the direction of the normal of the polygon it collided with. This gives us a perfectly bouncing ball with perpetual motion. Currently though, it's kinda hard to tell which direction the ball is moving, so let's add a trail renderer to the ball. It's kind of a small problem, but the ball ends up in a state where it isn't really bouncing around the circle anymore, and it's just going back and forth. Now there's a few ways we could fix this, but I wanted to add another ball to see how that would look. The moment I did that, the simulation became far more interesting. Watching this sparked a completely new idea, but before I get to that, I wanted to make a few more aesthetic changes. I changed the colors of the balls, and then I made the color of the ring oscillate, and then to make things more interesting, I added sound effects whenever a collision took place. Everything is slowly coming together, but my new idea was to have these balls compete in a battle royale to stay inside the ring. To visualize this, I added a rotating hole to the circle and watched. Just by adding the hole, it already made watching the simulation feel way more intense, but I decided to add more balls to see how chaotic it can get. Watching the balls clash against one another in an attempt to stay inside the ring was actually ridiculously entertaining. I also made it so that the balls in the ring start at a random rotation so that the games will be different every time. After a bit of brainstorming, I actually had the idea to create an entirely fictional sports league based on this game. Instead of it being a free-for-all match, I wanted to create teams that would play in a league against one another. For the teams, I had the idea of making each team named after a month of the year, which seems a little weird, but it allows everyone in the world to identify with the team. Originally when I started, I didn't have any logos or team names aside from the month name, but as you'll see soon, the league grew so quickly that people were making them for me. I created an entire schedule where each team would face one another throughout the season. The teams will get to play 11 games, meaning the entire season will have 66 games total. But of course, I needed a name for the league, and the most fitting name I could think of was the Big Ball League. And yes, the acronym BBL was an accident, I swear. With a few more changes, I started recording these games and posting them to Instagram. Obviously, I put a bit of work into this, but it all started off as a joke. It's been about a month and a half now, and we just recently hit 30,000 followers. I didn't think it would get this big, but it did, and it happened really quickly. I didn't even think this whole league fully through, but people started keeping track of standings and stats, so I figured I should probably do that too. There's a ton of different pages that have been popping up around the league, like commentators, team fan pages, players, and more. If I'm being honest, I really wasn't prepared for any of this, but now I have a Discord with over 1,500 people in it. I've been making a ton of changes on the fly, such as making two conferences called the Cold and Hot Conference. I'm also working on an all-star game, and since the season is almost finished, there's going to be a playoff soon. It's kind of funny how this has all played out, but it's been fun so far, so I'm not complaining. I didn't think I'd be taking something called the Big Ball League seriously, but here we are. I have a bunch of ideas on some changes that'll make the league even more entertaining, but I suppose that'll be for another video. If you guys are interested and would like to watch the league, I'll put links to it down below. As always, thank you guys for watching. Peace.